can hear, my voice is scrappy. I also got sick,
Oh,
but because I'm
sorry.
just gonna ask the questions and you're gonna talk, then it's fine. Okay, so are you ready?
I'm ready, yes.
Hi, Marty. Welcome to What If I Say Yes?
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You're my first interview in English.
Well, it's an honor to not just be here, but to be chosen to be the first interview. I'm honored, and I hope to set the bar high for this. I'm going to do my best, and hopefully, when we both get used to this, we can come back maybe in a year and do a follow up when we both like have more interviews under our wings.
Okay. Yes. I'll put it on the list. So, you know, you have gone to my website, www.whatifisayes.com, and you've read the text that Hector wrote about the yeses and the nos. But before we get into your big yes and some no's that you have said in your life, let's tell the audience first how we know each other. You remember where we met and when?
Originally, no, not the first time. Probably at a birthday party. I would imagine like early on, like or maybe one of Julian's early birthday parties, or perhaps
Because
I'm
I
not sure.
don't
Do you
remember.
Okay. No, I don't remember then. Then I feel comfortable saying I do not remember the first time we met.
I don't remember the first time. I just know that we met before, just because you were a friend with Hector, and because I was living in New York, and I'm sure our paths crossed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But when our relationship started, because now you are my adopted brother, I adopted you, started when?
Well, it was after Hector passed away. Well, we got to know each other more closely in the hospital, and then stayed in touch as we prepared for the memorial service, and then continued to stay connected as I collected stories for the book for the Legend of Hector, and then kept it going. Yeah, you promised to message me once a day, I believe, when we moved to my family. We were living in New York at the time when Hector passed away, and we moved 3 months later, 4 months later to Atlanta, and I was not pleased about it. Everyone in my life was aware that I was not pleased about it, including my wife. Um, and I was ready to go down a dark hole of depression, just having left my friends and returned to a city that I did not want to live in. Or returned, meaning I used to live in Georgia, so moving to a city I didn't want to live in, and then also on the back of losing my mentor for life, Hector. I was ready to just sort of like curl up into a dark ball and feel sorry for myself. And you promised to send me a message every day, and that was it was really like I didn't believe you would actually pull it off. I ended up saving all of them, and you kept it going, and then we just stayed in touch since then, thankfully, and that was an incredible year. I came out of the little dark place that I was in, and am thankful that you did not give up on me.
So when Hector was in the hospital, unconscious, and we were just waiting to see what was going to happen, I heard one day that Monique, my sister-in-law, had asked my niece, Valentina, Hector's daughter, if she wanted to let anybody into the room at the hospital. And the only person she said yes, or the only person she mentioned was you, was Marty. So right then and there, I knew that you were special. And then, as you said, we had conversations, long conversations. I remember at some point we were putting drawings in front of Hector's bed, and you brought one. I don't know if you made it with gauze or you
Mm-hmm.
made it yourself, but it was a beautiful drawing. And
Yeah, yeah. I remember. I forgot about the pictures. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. But now I remember. I found other friends who wanted to contribute artwork as well, and I brought what they had to hang up as well.
yes, that was beautiful. And then once Hector passed away, I just felt like I do many things in my life. I just get a hunch, I get a feeling of something I really want to do. And that's when I ask you to be my adopted brother. So, well, I'm going to ask. You may say yes. You may say, what? No. And you said yes. And well, you've become my brother. Um, and I appreciate that very much. I enjoy everything we talk about, we do together, the pictures of our families we shared, the adventures from your kids, from mine. So that's why I also chose you to be my first interview in English. um, well, once we have established our relationship for the audience, then the big question, tell us about a time in your life when you said yes.
All right. I was thinking about this, and for the past week or so since we've discussed it, the "what if I say yes" concept has been a mantra for me as well since Hector gave me the blue postcard back in, was it 2006 maybe, or sometime around then. But I still had the blue postcard and everything. So I like to think like the speech that Hector gave
Ah, you
at
mean the
that.
painting? The postcard of
No,
the painting?
he gave it he to invite people to the event. He
Okay,
gave everyone a blue postcard that just said "What if I say yes" on it,
yes.
and I've kept that card with me. I knew it was an important card immediately, and he and I talked about the show a little bit beforehand, but he still kept the point of it a secret. And so anyway, the mantra has been near and dear to me, and it's guided me in the Hector speech about what you have on your site, I believe, right? The wording from his speech that night about opening up oneself and it being potentially scary. It's tearing down these fences we have. I've always wanted to live up to that, and so the story I wanted to tell today was about this happened 2018, I believe. Um, I had when we moved down here to Atlanta, I had become a high school teacher, and it was the job of a lifetime, and I took it very seriously. I put a lot of myself into the job. I basically brought my what would Hector do mentality to the job, saying like I'm going to say yes to any opportunity that comes my way. I'm going to say yes to anyone who wants to support or help. I'm going to say yes to any sort of adventure that the students want to go on. And after a year of doing that, it was incredibly taxing on me emotionally and even just like physically. So I was putting so much effort into school that there's one day I was leaving the house and I knew I was planning to wear some cool sneakers, and I opened the door and I walked out, and spent all morning. I spent all morning trying to decide which cool sneakers to wear, and I closed the door and I looked at my sneakers and I went and I got in the car and I said, nope, you know, I should wear some other sneakers. And I went back in, and then I said, no, you know what? If I'm going to wear, I changed sneakers. I left the house. I came back in. I said, no, this is ridiculous. I'm thinking too much about this. I need to put the other sneakers on. I should just stick with my first choice. And then I changed sneakers again. Anyway, and basically, I spent the next 20 minutes going in and out the door, changing or not changing sneakers. Um, and it sounds ridiculous, but this is something that I sort of had gotten used to in life, and it had exacerbated during this job. This like thinking deeply about everything to the point of almost paralysis. And later that afternoon, I called a friend of mine named Mike, who he and Hector were close as well. He was part of our group. But I called Mike, and I knew Mike had been struggling with the passing of his father, and he had Mike had gotten the therapy, and Mike was the first person I knew who had gone to see a therapist. No one in my family had ever done it. It was not even like I maybe had a friend who told me that when they were a teenager they had saw a psychologist, but it was just never a thing that was even an option. I had gotten through most of my life by just pretending, by either just a series of like basically harmful, ineffective ways of dealing with things, either by ignoring them or blaming myself to, you know, in horrible ways, or blaming other people, or blaming, but mostly blaming myself. Anyway, I finally called Mike and I said, Mike, I something I love the parts of my personality that make me who I am. There are parts of my personality that are really ineffective for me and my family, and I need help with that. And I know you've been to therapy, and I never talked to him about it because I always felt like he would be ashamed of it, and I didn't want him to have to speak of something he'd be ashamed of. So I was like, I my yes was I need to see a therapist. And I broke down in tears because I just couldn't. It was unbelievable to pull down this wall that I had held up for no real reason other than fear, um, and fear that if I let down this wall, I would lose my identity. Like Hector said, the walls define us, and my wall was that I can figure this out myself. I can solve my problems through one way or another, um, and I'll be fine. And that was my identity. And my parents didn't go to therapy. They so even that my identity beyond myself, like the family I had, that further identity was about solving problems the old-fashioned way. And so it was just a sense of relief to to say this to Mike and to hear him very supportively and comfortably say, this is a great idea, Marty. And he answered all my questions about like what it would be like the first time, and what we might, the numbers of times it might take to find a therapist that I want to talk to, whether I might see a psychiatrist and what the difference would be, whether the stigma around medication. I just talked about everything that I was afraid of, and he just talked to me like he understood that it was a big step, um, and also that he wanted to make sure that it sounded completely normal. So I sort of took a shot in the dark and found a therapist. Um, in my first appointment, she basically said, like, let me stop you right there because it sounds like you need to be on medication from what you're telling me. But halfway through, she was like, you need to be on medication, sir, and let me get you a psychiatrist immediately. And I was like, whoa, that's forward. I did not feel a good vibe with her, and I felt comfortable finding another therapist and doing it over again until I found someone else that I felt comfortable with. So yeah, that's the story, and since then, I've been in regular therapy for weekly. I've been in group therapy. I've done some outpatient programs. I've had a psychiatrist. I've been on antidepressants and anxiety medicine. Um, I I have accepted that my identity includes a mental health issues and a diagnosis that doesn't sound pretty, but it is me, and I've accepted that I need help on a regular basis. And thank goodness, because since then, lots of life has turned upside down in lots of ways, from COVID to work stuff to my mother passing away. So it's just like since I can't imagine, to having a second kid, to watching the kids grow, to going through 10 years of marriage with my wife, like finding a new friend group down here. It's all been, I can't imagine having done this without regular therapeutic help, and also the help of medication, and then also finding non-medicinal ways to uh, change my behavior or change my thinking to be more effective and helpful to life. So um, yeah, that conversation, that day with the in and out of the door with the sneakers, realizing that this was not a way that I should live and that most people should live, and then saying that, well, it's going to take knocking down these walls and saying yes to something that you really did not want to say yes to in the past. It's going to take that choice to become a healthier person for yourself and your family and friends. And that was the one of the most important yeses I've said for myself in my life.
It's interesting because when I usually present the idea of the website and the what if I say yes, the most common preconception is that it's a yes that leads to something exciting and happy, and it's not, I mean, it's not about that. It's about saying yes to something that's gonna, at least that's how I think of it. Saying yes to something that's gonna make your life a little bit better. And it can be as tough as that, or as super happy as saying, I'm gonna, I don't know, read 50 books in 50, well, not in 50 days, it's impossible.
50 days.
50.
Yeah,
That
like
would
I'm
be
going to say yes
superpower.
to a ski trip, or yes to something like a trip to the beach, right? Like those are
Yes.
lovely things.
Yes, but it's like a huge range of saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
And now that you speak of therapy and mental health, I go back to a comment that my oldest nephew, Luis, said a few months ago when I went to Mexico. He turned to all of us, like the generation before him, and said, all of you would benefit so much from having therapy. And he said, among my friends, the weird thing when we get to know each other, the weird thing is that you're not in therapy, like all of us are. And
Mm-hmm.
it's part of this generation. But as you said, I mean, you weren't, it wasn't part of your life because you didn't know people who in your family or friends who needed it or who had talked about it openly. Because
Right.
that's the other thing. Once you start talking about it with other people, you learn that that happens more often than not, that in every single family, there's someone who has gone through something difficult, who has lost someone who has had problems or mental issues. And so I wonder how now you are changing the future of your kids just by them watching you going through this. What do you think is gonna happen to them?
I mean, that's sort of a great mystery. We haven't done this as a society, right? We haven't tried to educate, like socially, emotionally educate our children with socially emotional or like social emotionally educated parents yet. Like we've sort of like tried to do it with kids, or we've tried to do it with parents, but now it's a full thing. And Gus is, my oldest son Gus is 8, and his he goes to a charter school in the neighborhood, and they are very big on emotional learning, and so he's getting that from school, and he's seeing in me, in his parents too. Jesse, since then, I've talked my wife Jesse into they didn't need to talk to her. She saw how well it was working for me, and now she's seeing a therapist. And we talk to Gus. We let him know when we're, when we have therapy meetings, and I am open with him about, like, well, I say my therapist says this, or I'm on this medication, and or I'm on vitamin D because it's helping boost my mood. So he sees me take my pills, and he gets it from school, and it helps because his my mother passed away in 2021, and he knows my father had passed away long before he was born, but now that he was very close with my mother, and it really just shook him deeply, and as one would expect. And thankfully, like, he's seen us go to therapy, and he was able to reach out to his teacher at school, and he started seeing the psychologist at school on a sort of like weekly basis or bi-weekly basis to talk about his feelings. And he developed a really nice relationship with her, and we found some books that are about talking, your a book about brain bullies that was fascinating so we developed language to talk about the type of brain bullies that are in his head and telling him things that aren't true. So I mean, who knows what life will be when he's a grown up, and where he will be, mentally, and my younger son Wally too. Jesse's about to make coffee over here, so you might hear some grinding. Um, so who knows where things might fall. I know, though, that this is a relationship with mental health that I absolutely didn't have growing up. And man, and I don't blame anyone for that. It's just, but if it were there, I would have had a completely different outlook on life, and I would have struggled with other things, but struggled less with some of these things that could have been solved through talking and listening. So hopefully that will be the impact. That Gus will have other things to struggle with, and Wally will have other things to struggle with, but not as much their mental health.
Mm-hmm. The same way when you looked around and you didn't see anybody who needed therapy or told you that they needed therapy, they're going to look around and say, oh, so this is something we can do. If our parents are doing it, like, this is, I'm hoping that they grow up knowing that that's normal, that's not an issue, that's not for crazy people, which is the classic. They go, oh, yeah, you're going to the therapist. Mm-hmm.
And hopefully they take it one step further. Like, we want the next generation to take our progress further, right? And so and then we'll be jealous of them because they'll have discovered this new thing. But hopefully they will go further into other types of therapeutic help that don't require antidepressants. And so hopefully there are more discoveries in the near future, and they will be able to say, like, wow, can you imagine how old fashioned that system was that Papa used to do, where he would take this medicine to change his brain chemistry when all you could do is X, Y, or Z now, So hopefully that is the future.
therapy and medication will be all so old school for them. I'm gonna have. Can you imagine what could be like something not physical that they would have, or would we be like a chip you insert? Because when we think about the future, the chip inside is like the easy answer, but it sounds
there are scary things about the chip. It does sound invasive. Hopefully it's more natural, a system that embraces nature, and chemicals from the earth to balance your own chemicals, to make you less dependent and more able to make decisions on your own without the aid of any sort of chemical changes. So that maybe to do it entirely cerebrally. I don't know. I'll be jealous of them. Yeah.
I need to go a little bit back just to give context. Because not everybody has gone to the website, and not everybody knows what the heck we were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah.
So my brother Hector, I think it was 2005.
Okay.
He was going to give a friend a painting called Yes as a surprise, based on a conversation he had with her. I think she mentioned Hector had given a painting to her boyfriend at the time. And so one day she mentioned something that, oh, that was a beautiful painting and it would be lovely if she could have one. And then Hector started playing with okay, so you're gonna say something, and then Hector said, and then I'm gonna say yes. And then this friend said, can I have a painting of yours? And Hector said, yes. And then months went by. Hector started creating this beautiful painting with that idea, the yes. And then I don't have that postcard. So if you keep it, please send me a picture.
Absolutely.
Now your image is frozen.
What
happened?
You froze for a moment as well.
Okay, there you're back. So he invited all of us. We went to a beautiful place in Manhattan, and then he read this beautiful text that's in the on my website, basically just saying the wonderful things that saying no bring to our life, like know our limits, define our boundaries, help us define who we are, but also how excited it could be to just one day say, what if I say yes to something, and then kind of make your boundary a little bit farther away from your center and experience something new that you hadn't tried before. And so he tells the story about this friend, and then he, how do you say when you unveil? And then he unveils this beautiful painting, and then he says, so you asked me for a painting, and this is for you. And it was beautiful. So anyway, that's the context. But coming back to where we were, I was also thinking of asking you if you can talk about a moment or an instance or a time when you and Hector together said yes to something. I have something in mind, but let's see if you can remember, or
oh my goodness,
you think of the same thing. It was a project.
There are so many things. I'd say easily the one that that made the most impact was Hardy Shirts, our t-shirt company that we started together.
How did that come about?
It was so Hector and I moved to New York right after college, like even before I graduated in 2004, and I had interned at MTV Networks where Hector was working. I had interned in his office, and was we became friends there, and was fascinated by this person that was just so positive and bright and cheerful. And so when we came back, I ended up getting the job. I went back to New York. I got the job there, and ended up sharing an office with Hector. So every day would be we'd spend the first 30 minutes at least just sitting down, having coffee, and just talking. Like he was in no rush to get to work. And we would, I mean, we did so many great things. We and then we'd have lunch together every day. And so everything was just like let's have let's just think of something and then follow that thread until there's well, we can't do that, and if there's never a we can't do that, then I guess we should do it. So like one time it was like, let's set an alarm and make sure we look as far out the distance of the skyline of New York as possible because we were high in a skyscraper. And then one time it was like, what if we um, just bought one lunch and split it? Would we actually be hungry if we both just like ate half a lunch, or would we be full? So there were lots of little things like that. One was like, let's start drawing a cartoon of the silly things we see in meetings. And we started just drawing like regular cartoons. So anyway, one was I like to wear. I was wearing lots of like T-shirts that had messages on them. This was just after the this was after Bush's reelection, I guess. So my political activism was at an all time high, and I was maybe not all time, but it was a high, and I was wearing some like T-shirts with messages on them. And Hector liked them, and we'd always talk about the shirts that I wore. And he said, like, we talked about it's a nice billboard. Like you just walk around, it's like, here's my philosophy on my chest, right? And so we said, what if like there were some nice philosophies and they were our ideas that we wanted to share with the world. And since Hector is a designer, an artist, we sort of said, I said, great, let's think up a concept and make a T-shirt. And then it just became like a thought experiment, like what would the first one be? And we made our first one, and it was just a black shirt with like it was very simple. It had two little stick figures, and they were on different levels. And the two people on different levels just said two people like this, and it said equals, and it had a icon of a bomb. And then the one below that had two people on the same level, and it said equals love. Mm-hmm. And or it just equals a heart. And it was really, it was a great shirt because and we said, like, all right, let's print it. And we found a printer in Brooklyn who was doing some, homemade screen printing, and we went out to their studio, and that was a weird experience, but they wanted to print our shirt. And then we set up a website to sell it and everything, because people would see it and like, what is that shirt? And we explained it to them. We developed this idea of conscious love, which is conscious love is it starts with oneself. And oh man, I used to have it memorized, but like the definition, but it starts with oneself, and it's about knowing what you need and doing it for yourself, and then looking at someone else, hearing what they need and doing that for them. And so it's thinking about how to make the people around you feel loved. And so every shirt would have the theme around conscious love. And so we did eventually 7 shirts together, and we eventually did a photo shoot. We shopped them around to different distributors to see if they want to sell them. It was basically, a money pit for my family and Hector and myself, who were investing in this, company that was essentially making no, profit, but doing enough to make cool shirts with really simple philosophies that Hector and I could completely get behind. And then, giving them out or selling them for cheap to our friends and family. And every now and then a random person from across the world would come across the website and want a shirt. So it was, I still have all the shirts. My family, most of my family has all their shirts as well.
We have lots we also have lots of them.
Oh, good. I'm glad they still exist around the world. I wore mine constantly, so mine are really beat up. But it was our philosophy. It was our way to like exercise our minds and our creativity, um, and put our philosophies on our chests so that people the whole goal would be it someone say, oh, what's that shirt mean, and they say, oh, thanks for asking, and then we get to explain it to them, and then hopefully also sell them a shirt. So that was a wonderful, just like, can we do this? And it's like, yeah, even though it made no sense. Like there was no way we were. There were a lot of reasons to say no, including like just like the amount of money and time and effort and the potential for failure. And we did, we essentially, didn't make us rich and famous. We didn't quit our jobs and go into t-shirt production, but it was one heck of a fun thing to do that I'll never forget, and that many of my friends still remember and wear their shirts too. So um, it was a very important part of my life that I still am always happy to brag about.
That's another example of an interesting yes. So it's a yes that doesn't lead you in the end to a happy Hollywood ending, or
Mhm.
thinking of business of a happy ending business-wise,
Mhm.
but that has so much richness inside and leaves you with so many things, so many beautiful things, so many lessons that you've learned. And just the process and the experience sounds like it was lovely. The t-shirts that we have, Carlos and Maya have one each that they use as pajamas because they're super soft. They
Uh-huh.
love them. Carlos is disintegrating. It's like has holes here and there, but he doesn't want to get
Uh-huh.
rid of it. It's like it's one of his favorite t-shirts.
That's
So
great. I mean, it's yeah, yes, this was what was one of the brilliant things about saying yes with Hector, was that the outcome wasn't important. If you tried to talk about the outcome, he would want to, no, 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 no. Let's save that for another time. He would get serious. Like there were times we did this thing where we were both the artists and the financial team, and so we'd start talking about the design of the shirts, and then he'd say like, oh wait, we have to ask the business team. I said, oh, you're right. And so we just spin around once in our chairs, and we lean forward and be businessmen, and we'd say like, well, do we have the money to actually do this? And it was just that, like, it was a silly thing, but just spinning in your chair, he was able to become a business person and think like, can we afford to do this? Is it a waste of money, or is this a good use of our money? So it wasn't all like, the yes wasn't just it was a conscious yes. It was not an unconscious yes. And this was, it's a thing that I always wanted to. I remember even that night when he was doing his yes, what if I say yes presentation. I wanted to ask him, it's like, come on though, you must have, there's so many resources to produce this painting, so much time, so many other paintings you couldn't do. Like, you can't actually embrace this as a life philosophy. You're going to drive everyone crazy. And that's, I mean, I love to do this with Hector, is just challenge him on these things, and him to me too.
mhm.
Um, and I think what's key to remember is that uh, he said yes this one time. This one yes inspired so many more yeses that he didn't have to like say yes to everything. If someone said like, let's go skydiving without parachutes and hopefully we land safely, he
Mhm.
didn't have to say yes to everything. But that one simple yes um, made a huge impression on a lot of people, who then went out and said a bunch of other yeses after that, and it created this wave of positivity that the world needed and his friends needed. And even if it's not a full embrace, like of insanity, it's consciously choosing when it's a safe time to push the fences a little further and accept a little more of, accept that you and your experiences can include a little more
Mhm.
than what you expected they could include.
Well, in our family, for example, he was the first one who pursued the idea of doing graduate school abroad. So from Mexico, he went to New York City, and for everybody was like, mind blowing, like, oh, you can do that. And I remember him in New York City, me in Mexico, very, very frustrated about my previous romantic relationships and life in general and politics and this and that. So I would speak with him on the phone and complain and complain and complain. And he would be like, well, you have a way to change that, you know? I know, but you do have a change. So little by little, he started planting the seed of, you can make a different choice. Let's start. So one day he just said it out loud. Why don't you go abroad? Why don't you pursue a graduate school abroad? And I was like, oh. So first I got super scared, and then I was like, yes, I can do this. And so I was the second one who followed in his footsteps. I ended up in New York City, which was lovely because I had 16 years. Well, I didn't live those 16 years in New York, but I was at least 10 of those. I was close to him before he passed away in 2016. So in the end, it was so much more than going abroad and finding my husband and having a daughter. It was having time with him that I didn't know was going to be the last years together. So yes, it can be so interesting, so different, so challenging. So, which leads me now to another question. So now that you are a father, how are you passing those messages to your two kids, and how that has changed your relationship with Jessie as your wife? Like how has that philosophy changed your relationship with your wife and your kids?
Good question. And that brings, it reminds me that the story Hector told in his speech that night was the story as a father. Was he and Valentina were walking down the street, and she picked up a raggedy doll, and he had to say yes, even though his intention was, I have to protect my kid. I have to, I don't want her picking up trash, or it could be someone else's, or who knows the amount of like bad things that could happen from picking up this dirty toy.
And for her, it was a treasure.
Yes, exactly. Completely unaware that this could be this. There is danger attached to this, or anything. So, there is that singular story has challenged me throughout my life as a father to balance letting them explore versus protecting them, versus convincing my wife that I am protecting them, right? Because that's the other part of it. Like, saying yes to them also means that like your partner has to be okay with you saying yes. And it is very difficult. So what's the way it's worked with Jessie and me, my wife and me, is that she has come to understand that even when I was, because you said, I asked her this morning, I said, Lucia wants me to talk about a time I said no. And she's like, when have I ever said no? I just tend to just like, I'm a yes go person for most things, not a conscious yes person. Let's just do it. Who cares? So she and I have a wonderful balance so far, where I tend to want to push and she wants to challenge that, and then there are times where she wants to stay put, and she allows me to challenge that. What's nice is that it's helped me as a father, because we've found a way to, instead of sort of going tit for tat, where I get to say yes this time, she gets to say yes another time. We want to make sure that we can compromise on our yeses so that we both feel comfortable with them. And that creates even, it just means we have to think from the other person's perspective before saying yes. And that is not a limitation as it might sound. It's not a watering down of both our feelings. It's a coming up with a new direction that embraces both of our feelings. That's how I believe it has worked as Jesse's husband and as her partner as a parent. Now, for the kids, honestly, this is where it just gets me in the gut the most, is that this is where Hector was supposed to be here to give me this advice while I was raising my children. Especially like I didn't know I was he was he was around when my father passed away. He was not when my mother, but like I have not I don't know many people who I'm close to who are parents or parents of that want to help and give advice, and so I want to be bouncing these things off of him, and it's frustrating, eternally frustrating that I cannot. Because it's sort of like, all right, you said, I know your philosophy is this, Hector, but come on, in this situation, what would you do? So that's what we would talk about just all the time. But so where I've come down is that I know I want to allow them to discover things. I want to ignore these voices in my head that are saying, what would the other parents say? Or what if this snowballs into XYZ far down the road? I want to look at it as in like they're kids, they love to play. They love to imagine things. They love to have their minds blown by new experiences. And so let's give them those experiences and keep an eye on them. I remember when this was a small story, but like watching Gus as a 2-year-old climb on, like, here's the play set over here, and then he finds the rocks next to the playground, the slippery rocks to crawl on. And I just try to think to myself, like, if he falls, like, I can hold his hand, but if I hold his hand as he's walking on them, he'll learn to trust my hand being there to balance himself. So I instead of doing that, I taught him like 3 points of contact. I'm not an outdoorsy person, but I'm like, you need to have 2 legs and a hand, or 1 leg and 2 hands, or your buns and 2 hands. Like, you have to have 3 points of contact with a rock, with the surface as you're moving, and as long as you have those, you'll generally be safe. Yeah. And so I want to just give him that information, and trust that if he falls, he'll skin himself, and we call those trophies. So if you fall off your bike, you don't get a boo-boo, you get a trophy. So embrace these. Yeah, so you get to like show off. You're like, that's a trophy from falling off my bike. That one's from slipping on the pavement, because you earn them by having fun, right? Like you earn them by going beyond yourself and doing something that at like a championship level, a superhuman level. So you earned it. It's your trophy. So I think using language like that and paying very close attention while they do these things without interceding in them, and then honoring his failures and his successes afterwards. That's how I try to do it. I'll be honest, it's hard, and I do say no's, and I do get frustrated with them, and I do have to be a parent, and I do have to, I do lose my cool and everything else. And I apologize. And I apologize later, and I talk about why. So yeah, I don't want to pretend that I'm breaking ground and being this super dad, and able to live up to this idea that I've built in my head of Hector and his philosophies, or you and your way of acting. Like I find it hard to even also to live up to everything I know you're saying yes to. And I also am accepting of what I can do and making little steps at a time and hoping they accumulate into Gus and Wally knowing me as and knowing Jesse as parents who said yes, who said conscious yeses.
Thinking of me and Maya and the what if I say yes to things about parenting, I think the hardest ones were, what if I say yes to apologize when I really messed up? And so we get into a huge fight and we get super upset at each other and I don't want to speak to her. And going back to her when I'm calmed down and she's also okay and saying, you know what, I really messed up. I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have said it this way. That was huge. It was like, oof. And the other was, without getting upset, just what if I say yes to recognize the times when I mess up on the things that I've told her to do right, as if I were perfect, no? So, you have to, I don't even know what, but if I've told her many times, this is the way you do this is the way you do it, because and then one day I do it and I do it completely wrong. It's so fun for her to just, when I say it out loud and say, see, we're not perfect, I also messed up, and she gets super excited, like, see, mama, see, you too can mess up. Anyway, before I let you go, before I let you go, 2 questions. So we talked about all the yeses. Now tell me one moment in your life when you said no, a good no. And the final question is that sweatshirt that you have, where did you find it? I love it. Did you put it for me today?
I was looking for a hoodie to wear, and my friend's T-shirt. It says "Radiate Goodness" on it.
Oh,
that's his. This friend of mine made this shirt, and then I was cold sitting here by the window, and so there was a big wrestling fan, and there was a wrestler. He's still around. His name is Bryan Danielson, but he wrestled in the WWE, and he had his gimmick was like, I'm just gonna say yes to everything, and he would like jump around and say yes, yes, yes. And he was a little guy, so a little scrappy guy who like had no business wrestling the big burly dudes, but he just embraced this positivity. So I bought one of his sweatshirts way back then. I mean, this was probably like 2012 maybe, and yeah. So I figured it would be. My Hardy shirts were like up in the closet, so I quickly grabbed this one and thought it would be appropriate.
Very nice. And
so the time I said no, and like I said, it was hard to think of a no that went in a good area. I said a lot of no's that ended up being bad, or just leading down ineffective paths. But very recently, this was a fun one. There was a position. My manager opened a new position at work, and it would be a level up from me, and she read the job description to me, and I thought to myself, this is me. I want this job, and then it occurred to me very quickly that there was a coworker of mine on the team who also wanted this job, and I could tell that like it was probably he definitely deserved the job. He had been at the company for 10 years. I've been here for just 2.5, and he has worked. He's worked his butt off and had become an integral part of the team, and just deserved this promotion, and I knew that consciously. And then I thought, yeah, but I think I can get this job. And I think I can do really wonderful things with it. And I know it will pay me significantly more money. And I know it will be a much better bonus at the end of the year. And it's like a step for my career. Like, the logical thing is to apply for the job. Now, it'll mean that I'm going up against him and then other candidates as well. But I think I can, earn it. And it's not my fault if I get it and he doesn't. It's may the best man win, right? And what are you going to do? And I had conversations with a lot of people around me, and a lot of them were just like, "It's your career, man. It's your life. You don't owe it to anyone to sacrifice on their behalf." There was also the argument, like, for the good of the team, if you think you'd be a better, candidate for the job, you should do it. It's the right thing to do. It's for the company. It's the right. They want to hire the right person. If you think you're the right person, you should compete for it. Basically, constantly pointing out that competition is good, and the outcome will justify the process. So that if I win, then I'm the best candidate, and therefore no one can blame me for that. Plus, it's food that goes, it's food in my kids' mouths, right? Like, if I say no and I could have gotten it, I'm leaving this amount of money on the table, and that's never a good business decision. So I thought long and hard about this, and I talked to my therapist about it, and she said, "All right, so your animal brain." We talked about like animal brain and human brain a lot, and like the animal brain understands all the competition. Like that's winner, that's the survival of the fittest. That makes sense for animal brain. What does the conscious love brain think? And I listened to the manager talk about the position, and I realized I really like the team that I'm on, and I'm becoming a very Marty version of Hector to my team. And I know if I take this promotion, I'll lose that. I'll spend less time talking to them and more time working on the business side of things, and I'll be expected to be more professional and instead of silly during meetings. And I know Hector, stayed. I thought of Hector's life as well, and a lot of people around him moved up, and people around him got their own offices, and he tended to stay in the same office with a partner in the office, and he didn't want to leave that. He was fine with this position. He was fine with the level that's expected of him. He was fine doing that and doing his painting and playing with the kids outside of work and being a father and husband. Like he liked all that balance, and he knew that if he put his resources towards getting his own office or moving up, he would upset that balance. And that occurred to me hearing myself talk to my therapist, that I'm going to lose that balance that I really like right now. And also throw this team into a really uncomfortable position where it's me versus him, and the manager has to decide, or someone else is going to get it, and we're both going to be grumpy. And I said, no, I'm not going to apply for it. And I pulled myself out of the application process. I asked if I could be in the hiring committee for the new person, and my manager said yes. And so that gave me a chance to actually have a say in the community around me. Instead of competing to run the community, I wanted to have a say in who joined the community. And so I said no, and it was against my animal brain and against my business instincts and advice, and it was the right thing to do. And I'm glad. And my coworker ended up getting the job, and I think it's best for him. It's best for me. It's best for the team and the company. And I'm not going to worry about what could have been.
That's a very thoughtful no.
Yeah,
that's a no with a big heart.
exactly. It's I mean, that's all these yeses and nos should be thoughtful, right? Like that's what makes them matter so much in the end is did we think deeply about it? And but then yeah, I now I call myself on that because it's like sometimes it's also fun to say yes. I don't know, you inspire me with your yeses that seem like you are yes hey I'm gonna send you a message every day or I'm gonna send you a picture every day and I think to myself come on it's impossible, have you actually thought about this, because it will be impossible to achieve that, and yet you do, or if you maybe you miss one, you're just like, oh, I missed yesterday, here's two, right, like here are two thoughts for today, here's two, like, so I don't know, what do you think? Maybe they don't all have to be thoughtful, I guess, right?
I mean, it's not like every time I say yes, I think it through. As I said
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning, it starts usually with a feeling. It's like when I sit down to write a text, like the other day, I had a friend who was feeling very blue because it was the anniversary of the passing of her dad. And I said to her, just stay present today, and I'm gonna ask your dad to send you a sign. That's all I said. And it's not like I thought it through, it was just what came out. And then throughout the day, I suddenly felt a rush to write something. So I said, I think I need to write something for my friend. So I sat down, and what came to my mind was her dad and her mom, who also passed years before, are gonna send my friend words through me. And so I started making up this story that it's not like I had a plan. I said, yes, it's just as soon as I put my fingers on the keyboard, the story just came down. And so it ended up a beautiful text where the mom and the dad are talking to my friend through me because they heard that I have a podcast that is of words and gifts, de regalos y palabras, and they needed to use my words to communicate with her. And then I just gave it to her. It was the best gift I could have ever given her. She read it the following day, but she had this huge reaction, lovely reaction. So that's kind of like 90% of my yeses are like that, but it's because I know they're coming from a good place, from the heart, or from intuition, and then the other 10% is I have a plan of I don't know, my dad was going to turn 80 and I wanted to do something special, so that took me more time. That's a very planned, thoughtful project that takes me several weeks or months to finally give him a book with I think I asked everybody a question about my dad, and I asked him to send me contact information of his best friends, and then I contacted the entire family and people who know him, and then I put that together with pictures. So that's a long process, yes.
I see.
But then going back to how the yeses and nos should be, and that's the last thing because I know you have to go. The first interview I did for this channel in Spanish to my friend Egli, she was saying her nose, for example. She noticed that most of her nose before had been nose based on fear. So I say no because what if? And she started noticing that and then changing that to a thoughtful no. It's like, no. I'm not going to say no because I'm afraid. I'm going to think it through. And if I feel that it's not in alignment with who I am or who I want to be, then it's a clear no. Or if I start feeling weird about saying yes to that decision, my body's telling me no, then it's a clear no. I don't take too much time like the time that she has now has shortened for a clear
Mhm.
no, because now
Mm.
she knows. And the same thing we said at the end of the interview, the yeses are no. We're not talking about saying yes to everything just for the heck of it, or for the,
Mhm.
now what's the expression? Just for the,
Yeah, just
the expression just for the sake of it? No, just for the,
both of those work. Just for the, just for the heck of it, makes work. They both of those work.
it's these yeses that come from the heart, from the spirit, from the intuition, from something that will make your life better. That's how I think of them. Marty,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
it's 11.
Oh,
You
right.
need to go.
I need to
I
go.
really, really appreciate you having taken up on me on this offer. Thank you so much for coming here. Any final words before we say goodbye?
Um, Thank you for doing this. Thank you for pushing forward relentlessly. Your relentless nature is it's a blessing to my life. I'm sure it's a blessing, and also it could be. I can imagine it's like, whoa, another project. Keep doing the projects. Don't let anyone in your head or around your head try to put the brakes on. It's the projects are an inspiration to show me what I can say yes to, and I don't have Hector. I have you, and I'm so glad that I have you. Thank you for sticking with me and showing me the light in so many times. I appreciate that.
And thank you for being my adopted brother. Te quiero mucho, Marty.
Te quiero mucho.
Bye. Say hello to Jesse.
Bye. I will. Thank you.
Bye.